At the Brazilian Grand Prix, Lance Stroll reached what could be his absolute rock bottom, spinning off on the warm-up lap and beaching the car in a gravel trap whilst attempting to rejoin the circuit. It was peak performance uselessness from Lance, and whilst his reputation is already in the toilet with no hope of recovery, I fear that this bad rep could be spreading to Aston Martin and ultimately be holding them back. And very unfairly, I might add, because the men and women at that team must be working so hard, especially on Lance's side of the garage. I feel so much for these guys, and I can't wait for the tell-all book to come out in 10 or 20 years' time. And I don't know about you, but I'm starting to associate the team's branding, colours and sponsorship, all of that, with Lance Stroll. And from their perspective, that's not good. All their big-name sponsors, such as Aramco, Cognizant, Boss, I don't think their entire marketing budgets could quickly repair the PR damage that Lance has done. After all, the buzz and excitement about having Alonso back in the team has now worn off. And the public are now saying, what else have you got? Adrian Newey and Honda haven't arrived yet, so the only thing really on offer is to watch Stroll redecorate barriers and plough gravel traps. Let's put it this way, if Aston Martin released a Lance Stroll edition of their new 2024 Vantage, would you buy it? Well, Daddy Stroll might buy all 200 of them and call it a resounding commercial success, and then quietly store them all in a cave in North Korea or somewhere. That is more or less the entire Lawrence Stroll experience at Aston Martin in a nutshell. And by the way, click subscribe if you're enjoying, and also feel free to vent your Lance Stroll and Aston Martin feelings in the comments below. This is a place of therapy and rebuilding, and I'm quite keen to hear what you guys have to say. Now, at some point in our lives, we have or will meet a Lance Stroll at some point, whether that's at work or a sports team or in everyday life. Someone who is not very good at what they do, has a terrible attitude, and is just given chance after chance after chance because of family connections. And because of this, they're bulletproof, basically impervious to the regular responsibilities and accountabilities you and I face. And because of these things, these sorts of people are impossible to like, and if they don't make the effort on their part as well, they are pretty much radioactive. Take Lance's incident in Brazil, for example. In an interview, rather than hold his hand up and say, this is my fault and I made the error and I take full responsibility and I really apologise to all the people in the team who have worked so hard this weekend, he decided to say this instead.
Really strange. As soon as I touched the brakes, I just had a huge rear lock, and then I was a passenger from there. So I've never felt that in the car. So maybe there was a brake failure problem. We have to look into it.
So according to good old Lance, he said it was a brake failure problem. And rather than taking any responsibility or apologising for the team, he just said, yeah, we need to look into it. Straight away, palming away any sort of responsibility or basic human empathy. It's unbelievable. Now, I want to look at how this affects Aston Martin's F1 operation on the whole, but if you're one of the teams that are fighting them at the moment, guys like Haas, Alpine, RB or Williams, you must be absolutely loving that they've got Stroll in one of their cars. Probably hoping that they give him a 15-year unbreakable contract, because that will just make your lives easier. And it's just that very thing, this lance-shaped anchor around the team that is holding the entire operation back on the external PR side of things as well. But from a fan's perspective, Aston Martin should be a commercial and PR powerhouse in Formula One, and as well as also being very successful on the track. They're a very recognisable brand that are setting up all the things for future success, and you should want to follow and support them. But you don't, because aside from Alonso, who appears to be carrying 99% of the effort on the driver's side at the moment, people don't take this team seriously because of the nepotism that is plaguing Aston Martin at the moment. And externally that has an impact as well, because from a fan's perspective, I don't think people want to be seen to be supporting that sort of thing or be associated with it. And now I'm almost certain that if Aston Martin decided to replace Stroll, or even if he was benched for just a few races, which meant that another driver could stand in for him, they could receive a tidal wave of fresh new support for the team. You know, when Lance beached his car in the gravel at the Brazilian Grand Prix, do you know what the fans were chanting? Check out this clip. They are chanting Drugovich in reference to Felipe Drugovich, Aston Martin's Brazilian reserve driver. A guy who I think most of the F1 world would quite like to see in a car next to Alonso, particularly for the Brazilian Grand Prix. And yes, I know, watching that clip of the fans in the stands chanting Drugovich, it could be seen to be as unfair or biased or unsupportive, but how things have gone so far, I think the vast majority of us would agree with those fans in the stands. We've seen enough now. Aston Martin potentially could have the entire Brazilian nation supporting the team, buying the merchandise, paying attention to the sponsors on the car. They could have their very own Franco Colapinto effect, where the entire Argentinian nation converted to being Williams fans overnight. Aston could experience exactly the same thing. After all, Brazil, like Argentina, but maybe not to the same degree, has been starved of an F1 driver for quite some time now. But when it comes down to it, having Fernando Alonso in one car is fine. For now, I think he's kind of getting towards the end of his tether now, but at least he offers something. He adds something to the team. And in contrast to that, having Lance in the seat next to him adds very, very little, almost to the point where you wonder, commercially and also on a fan perspective, is it actually a hindrance even having him there? I mean, go to any sort of outlet where they sell massively overpriced F1 merch, whether that's a pop-up store or even a stand at a Grand Prix itself. The Aston Martin section is normally loaded with unsold Stroll gear. There's one here in London at the O2 Arena. It's like a small outlet store, but yeah, tons and tons of Stroll stuff. It looks like it's been there for a while and it's probably waiting now to be shredded or recycled into wall insulation or fast food. And I'd imagine that it isn't smooth sailing on the business or sponsor or marketing end either, and it's actually important to remember that whilst Lawrence Stroll owns the team, or more accurately is the majority shareholder, there are other shareholders and investors who probably are wondering why they have to tolerate having Lance in the car, when potentially a big name signing could probably be made overnight. And when it's a matter of tens or hundreds of millions or maybe even billions of dollars, you do wonder how much longer Lawrence can vouch for Lance in front of these guys. Because surely now patience has got to be running out, if it hasn't run out already. Even their sponsors and partners, and there are a fair amount of them to be honest, they must all have a pretty similar question. And they must be wondering, why is it this season whenever the camera pans round to one of our cars, it's in a pile of broken carbon fibre or stuck in a gravel trap? People only see the logos on those cars when something has gone wrong. And surely these sponsors and partners won't want their name and logo to be associated with failure and incompetence. And like I said earlier, the buzz around Alonso being at Aston Martin and getting podiums and everything, that's long gone now. So whenever we see any kind of branding or sponsors from Aston Martin, it's normally when things aren't going that well. And even worse, when things are going well for the team, that means that the cars are just both running in 10th and 13th place or something, which doesn't give them any airtime from cameras anyway. So yeah, massive, massive problem for them there. So I would not be surprised if sponsors are starting to get a bit annoyed at the state of things at the moment. But looking forward to the future, Aston Martin has a massive opportunity to relaunch and give rebirth to the team come 2026. By then, Honda will be on board, as will Adrian Newey, so it's a real chance to kind of do things differently. Now, I would be stunned if Yuki Tsunoda isn't in one of those seats by then. After all, he has been backed by Honda since 2016, and they won't want their own driver competing against them. And also with Aston's main attraction, Fernando Alonso, still contracted for 2026, I do wonder if it's already known in inner circles that 2025 will be Lance's last season at Aston, certainly in a race seat anyway. And if that was to be true, it would certainly explain his kind of approach and attitude and body language that we've seen from him so far this season, in which he's just trying to kind of get through the year so we can go off and do something he really enjoys. Because looking back, there was a time where Stroll, although he was a bit rough around the edges still, could do some quite interesting things in F1. But that time has now long since passed, and it would appear that his passion and enjoyment of the sport has done as well. And plus, I would argue that it's only due to the safety and standards of modern Formula One cars that Stroll has managed to have the career that he has. In previous decades, he would never have had the longevity that he has had because of the accidents that he has been in. There would have been injuries, broken bones, concussions, and he just physically wouldn't be able to do it for the length that he has. So look, I really don't want to bury the guy, but for the sake of the men and women who work tirelessly at Aston Martin to get his car out on the track and work around him, your heart has got to go out to these people. Because at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, Lance is going to be fine. Lawrence is going to be fine. It's just the regular folks at the team who are having to put up with this now, and hopefully things are going to turn around for them sooner than later. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. As always, stay in touch with me for any future content. And as always, I'm Paul, and I'll see you later. Cheers.